This video is to help you with section 2.3.3, working with generic rectangles and greatest common factors. So first of all, I want to mention to you that the classwork, again, is something that we will not worry about at this moment. You can stress the homework instead, but we want to make sure we understand the concepts from the classwork. And one of them is the idea of greatest common factor. So greatest common factor is defined as the greatest common factor of two or more integers is the greatest, the largest, positive integer, meaning positive whole number, that is a factor of both or all of the integers. So for example, they're telling you, if we have the factors of 18, which are 1, 2, 3, 6, and 18, and if we have the factors of 12, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12, we look at those two lists, we see that the largest factor they have in common, we call it the greatest common factor, is 6. So they both have 1 in common, they both have 2 in common, and 3 and 6, but the largest common factor, the greatest common factor, which we usually abbreviate to be GCF, would be 6. All right, so that is one of the main concepts they want you to learn from this unit. So for 275 A and B in the homework, we're doing it like we did yesterday's work, where you're figuring out the missing components to the generic rectangle puzzle. All right, again, like before, I'll give you a bit of a hint. So if we start by looking at B, you might say to yourself, all right, I don't know quite where to begin. Well, think about what you're given and what you can figure out from that. So for example, we know that this product is 56 and this factor is 7. So therefore, this factor must be 8 because 8 times 7 is 56. Then we know that this factor of 40 has to be multiplied by something to give us 2,400. So 40 times what value is going to equal 2,400? Well, 4 times 6 would give us the 24. We have a 0 from the 40, but we also need a 0 here, so 60 would be the missing value here. Okay. Then we know that 40 times 7 would give us a value of 280 here. We know that 8 times 60 would give us a value of 8 times 6 is 48 plus 0, 480 here. All right. So what we can figure out next is this one. 8 times something has to equal 1,600. Well, 8 times 2 would give us the 16, and we need 2 zeros, so 200 would be the missing value there. And 200 times 40 would give us an answer of 8,000. So the first thing you're going to do is fill in all those missing parts. Then you have to write a multiplication sentence, which should be, what is the 200 plus 60 plus 7, 267, times 40 plus 8 is 48. Again, parentheses next to parentheses, nothing in between means multiply. And what does that equal? Well, it equals the 8,000 from this box, plus the 2,400 from this box, plus 280, plus 1,600, plus 480, plus 56. Now, again, you may want to take the time to pause the video and copy that down. Make sure that that all makes sense to you. That's something you'll have to do on upcoming quizzes and tests as well. And then you're going to add together those sections, and you get the final answer, 12,816. So this would be what we're looking for part B, and you should go back and be able to do it for part A as well. For 276, James is painting his 10 by 8 foot bedroom window that contains a 2 by 3 foot window. Pardon me, he's painting his bedroom wall that contains a 2 by 3 foot window. So you want to make a sketch of a 10 by 8 foot wall, just basically a 10 by 8 rectangle, with a 2 by 3 window inside of it. Draw a diagram of that. And then how many square feet of wall does he need to paint? So in other words, what is this wall minus this window? Okay. For 277, they want to know whether the following pairs of fractions are equivalent, and they want you to explain. So is 1/4 equivalent to 25 hundredths? Right? And if so, explain. If not, explain. Is 3/5 equivalent to 12 fifteenths? is 4/5 equivalent to 5/4? Right, and you can explain these in multiple ways. 278. Misty and Yesenia have a group of base 10 blocks. Misty has 6 more blocks than Yesenia. Yesenia's blocks represent 17. Together they have 22 blocks, and the total number of blocks represent 85. What blocks could they have, and what is the value? So I will do most of this with you because I found that this is a very confusing problem for most students because there's just an awful lot of information. So first of all, Misty has 6 more blocks than Yesenia. So we don't know how many Yesenia has, but we know Misty has 6 more. And we know Yesenia's blocks represent 17. So she's either got a 10 plus 7 ones, or she's got all 17 being 1 blocks. Together, they have 22 blocks. And together, their total number of blocks means equal in value 85. Okay. We need to make sure that we write down the important information. So Yesenia, we don't know how many blocks she has. We know Misty has 6 more than that. Okay. So Yesenia plus 6, or the unknown plus 6. We know Yesenia's blocks represent 17, and together they have 22. Well, we said Yesenia could either have 17 ones, or she could have a 10 and 7 ones. Well, she can't have 17 ones, because if she has 17 1 blocks, then Misty would have 17 plus 6, which is 23. And when you add those together, that's definitely going to be larger than 22 total blocks. All right. So what that means is Yesenia must have a 10 block plus a 7. That's the only way she could get a value of 17. So she has 2 blocks. One is a 10 block, and one is she has 8 blocks. One is a 10 block, and the other 7 are 1 blocks. Okay. So I will move this over a little bit so you can see that. All right. So if Yesenia has a 10 block plus 7 1 blocks, I'm going to put 7 ones like this, I guess. Here's a total of 8 blocks, the 10 block and the 7 1 blocks. So maybe it would make more sense if I say 1 10 and 7 ones. Maybe that'll help make more sense out of the fact that we have a total of 8 then. All right, 1 of the 10 blocks and 7 of the 1 block, so a total of 8 blocks. Well, if she has a total of 8 blocks, we know from up here that Misty would have 6 more than that. So if Yesenia has 8, then Misty must have 8 plus 6, or 14 blocks. Now, so far we're fine then, because together 8 plus 16, 8 plus 14 does equal 22 total. So far we've made sure that we've represented what we needed. We needed to have Yesenia's block equal to 17, which is a 10 block and 7 ones, meaning a total 8 blocks. We know Misty had to have 6 more blocks than Yesenia, so she's got 14. And we know that the 14 blocks that the 14 blocks that Misty has, plus the 8 blocks that Yesenia has, will equal the 22 blocks we're told that they have altogether. All right. The last thing we need to make sure we've represented or recognized is that the total number of blocks have to represent 85. Okay. So we already said Yesenia's equals 17. So if Yesenia's equals 17, what would Misty's have to be? So you can take your 85 minus your 17, figure out the value of Misty's, which should be 14 blocks, and what blocks are those? All right. So at least I've given you hopefully a good start on that one. Again, there's an awful lot of information. You may want to even just break it down into, Misty's, number of blocks compared to Yesenia's number of blocks, compared to value of Misty's blocks, compared to value of Yesenia's blocks, because again, there's an awful lot of information there. All right, so that might be more helpful. For 279, you're going to use this data to complete. I am having you skip part A. All right. So part B says, when you look at this data, why is a dot plot not the best choice for graphing this data? Remember, a dot plot would be where you'd have the numbers and they have to go by ones, and then you're going to put a dot above it for every number that's represented. So for example, you'd have 25 would have a dot above it. You have to have 26, even if there isn't a 26, 27, 28 would have at least one dot because I see a 28 here, 29, and so forth. Why would that not be a good way to represent this data? All right, so when you look at this data, how spread out it is, you look at the fact that there's not much repetition to the data, there's not many that would have multiple, that come up multiple times. Why is a dot plot then not a good way to represent it? Then instead, they want you to create a stem and leaf plot for the data. Remember, a stem and leaf plot is where you have things like 2 represents your 20s, and then you have the leaves for all those. 3 represents your 30s, and you have the leaves for those. 4 are your 40s, and so on. So it's kind of a quick sketch on that, which I think I put up here. Yeah. All right, so kind of giving you a starting point there. And then go ahead and make a histogram for the data. Now for the histogram, I went with 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on. And again, alongside, remember, you're going to put your frequency. All right. So this is fairly small print. Again, you may want to pause and take a look to get yourself set up and started on that. And then you're going to put, how many golfers were between 20 and 30, how many were between 30 and 40, and so on. And then for E, what range of ages do most golfers fall between? So you might get that from your stem and leaf plot. You might get that from your histogram. Do you see any ages that are much larger or smaller than the others? All right. So again, there's not a ton of problems in this homework, but some of them are certainly lengthier. For example, 278, which I hopefully gave you a good start on, and 279.